Okay, we're back. Next review video for Unit 1 through 3 is environment. Once again, environment, how people are interacting with where they're coming, how the environment is impacting the settlement of that new society or existing society, how people coming together and the clashes of that coming together in a specific place shape and change that environment. So if we're looking at this, there's not quite as much content as there was in the last video we looked at with the economy, but there's still a good amount of content, especially in the early period. When we start, when thinking about environment, we think first about the Columbian Exchange, and that's the exchange of products between the so-called Old World and the so-called New World, the Eastern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere. And remember, one of the things that we always kind of get excited about is the exchange of foods, but there's a lot of things that could be exchanged. You've got tons of stuff that are interacting. Food is obviously the most famous thing, but you could have animals, horses, and cows coming to the New World, and things and people coming to the New World. People exchanging in both ways. Obviously, the most significant impact of for Amerindians of the Columbian Exchange is disease. So when we think of that early Columbian Exchange, smallpox really reshapes native societies. It fundamentally alters everything they understood and their societies in general. Though we should say that there are regional differences between Amerindian societies, and so our Aztecs and our Incas and our big empire societies are nothing like smaller societies or others that live in North America or all the way up into what today is Canada. So they're very different regionally. And so that's something to note. And the impact of that European presence and that disease is not felt in the same way. It's felt very directly in places that the Spanish colonized right away, and even that the English colonized. And it's so coastally, those Amerindians are really impacted by this new settlement. But on the interior, some of those Amerindian societies will be relatively protected from smallpox as the major issue. When we're thinking about the environment, how Europeans early on interact, especially in North America, is significant. So, the French are up in a very sparsely populated New France. There are not that many French settlers, and they're there looking for fur or other, economic trade things. Their relationship, due to the fact that there were so few of them, with Amerindians had to be positive, because if it wasn't, then they couldn't trade. On the other hand, if we're looking at English settlers in the southern part of what today is the United States, the first staple crop that they got excited about was tobacco. So how did the environment shape what people were doing? In the South, it was staple crop agriculture. In the far north, like in New France, it was trade. And then in places like New England or the middle colonies, it was kind of a mixed bag. And so that's something to think about in terms of environment. What does the environment allow that, and how does that settlement change? We talked in the last review theme in economics about how the North and South were different. Well, the environment certainly plays a large role in that change. If we jump ahead a little bit and we look to that revolutionary period, the Proclamation Line of 1763 obviously is a political statement by the English saying, hey, we don't want settlers to cross this line. But if you think of it, it's also one of the first statements specifically of the frontier. So on one side of that proclamation line is this, the idea of a settled society. On the other idea is the idea of an untamed society, at least when it came to the way English colonists thought about it. Obviously, there were many Amerindians that lived on that side who didn't see it that way. But that notion, the proclamation line, provides us this beginning. And the beginning is, hey, we've got a frontier. We need to do something about that. We need to go and make a new world in that frontier. And that's a big element in American history. The power, the ideology, and the reality of a frontier, and that environmental idea kind of shapes actions by lots of folks. And then finally, if we're looking at it towards the end, we could see how eventually there is a West because people do cross to the frontier. And how is the North and the South and the West regionally becoming different during that time? In addition, towards the end of this period, and that would be right before 1800, we see the extension of slavery in the lower South because of the beginning of the cotton economy right at the end of the period. So those are some ideas.